5th, 2024. First item on the agenda is to call for nominations for the board chair for 2024.
I'll nominate Paul for the chair.
Mr. Vick nominated Mr. Erstead as chair. I will call 3 additional times for nominations. Do I hear any other nominations? Do I hear any other nominations? And lastly, do I hear any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. All in favor of Mr. Erstead, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I will pass the meeting over to the chair.
Thank you, Aaron. I will open this for nomination for a vice chair.
I nominate Bob Newman.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to adopt a calendar meeting for 2024 at 8:30 a.m. on the suggested calendar. Do I hear a motion to adopt that?
I'll make a motion to adopt the calendar as presented.
Is there a second?
second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Aaron, can you get us started?
Minutes.
Minutes. Oh, yes. We all had a chance to look at the minutes last month's meeting. Any changes or corrections? Hearing none. I hear a motion to adopt the minutes?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. This item has been closed for the public hearing to be continued to the request from the December 8th, 2023 meeting for today, January 5th, so the staff could prepare findings that are consistent with the discussion.
Yeah, I guess I could just give a brief overview for anyone here that's showed up. The request was to create a 17.6 acre entitlement division that had a 33-foot access strip. This was continued from the December 8th, 2023 meeting to the January 5th, 2024 meeting so that staff could prepare findings consistent with the board's discussion. Per the board's directives, staff drafted findings which have been distributed to the board for review. Staff feels that the order drafted and presented accurately reflects the opinions and statements of the board and correctly identifies the thoughts on this matter. The matter was closed to the public at the last meeting, so no further oral written comment will be accepted. I do not believe anyone was going to be here on behalf of this request, but if there is anyone here, could they please step forward and state your first and last name? Is there anyone here on behalf of the Joan Cotilla request? Anyone here on behalf of the Joan Cotilla request? Okay.
All right. Do I hear a motion to accept the findings? Denial?
I'll make a motion to accept the findings as presented.
There a second?
And I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for members of the board, since the applicants are not here, I'll just have the record reflect they're not in attendance clearly, and we'll mail notice to them.
Page 7.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Dean Freeler request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward and state your first and last name?
Janelle O'Brien, here to represent Dean.
All right, so this is a 0.25 acre property in Clearwater Township that is zoned urban rural transition and located on Sugar Lake, which is classified as general development. The existing building coverage is 7.6%, and existing impervious surface is 24.6%. The request is to construct a 15-foot by 30-foot addition onto the north side of the existing home that is 5.5 feet from the east side yard, 10.1 feet to the west side yard, and 31 feet to the ordinary high water of the lake. The septic pressure bed would be 7.2 feet from the west property line. Variance is required for the proposed addition onto the existing home because the home is 31 feet to the lake, whereas 75 feet is required, and 5.5 feet, as well as 10.1 feet from the side yards, whereas 15 feet is required. A variance is also needed for the septic pressure bed that is proposed 7.2 feet from a property line, whereas 10 feet is required. The township recommends approval of the request as it is not closer to the lake. The response from a Wright County environmental health officer was that they believe the proposed location of the pressure bed would not be a cause for concern, and the proposed distance from the property line should allow enough room for installation while staying entirely within the referenced property. And that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to add to what's been said?
Nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll open it up for any comments or concerns from the public. Does anyone on the public have anything they wish to add or say? Seeing none, I'll take the conversation up here to the board. And Dan, could you get us started?
Okay. Looking at the drawing here and stuff, just for confirmation, you're planning on removing the stairs and the landing on the one side of the house? to
Correct.
Improve on the impervious? The pavers will be removed
Yes.
with that? And then do you have any type, or what are you gonna do with that afterwards? Any type of a
Just
landscaping?
grass. No.
Grass,
Yeah, it's not very wide.
okay. Yeah, and I do know this area back there, I know where this is at, so I'm very familiar with the property that way. It's narrow lots, it's small lots in there, and to do anything bigger, a variance is gonna have to, for any addition. We're going further away from the lake. The houses around them, you can see, are much larger and bigger, so with getting the impervious down, under our 25%, our lot coverage is there, putting in the sewer to what they're asking for, I guess, the way it's been presented, I can accept it.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Yeah, that was nice to be able to see this on the screen here, because I couldn't read that on the paper, so I was kind of waiting on that. But, so building size 7.6%, is that after the addition?
No, so the existing building coverage was, I had at 7.6%. Let's see here. With their proposal, I mean, it's still gonna be under, the resulting impervious is 21.1. We could round some stuff up. Let's see here.
It's still,
It's still gonna be under 15%. So there's no variance required, but I can get you a number.
I was just wondering how close, but I don't want to take all your time. I'm
They'd be at 11.7%.
11.7. Like Dan, that pretty much, I like the fact that you're removing some of that impervious, so I'm pretty much okay with it.
Thank you, Dan. Bruce? Any comments, questions?
Nope, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Your lot looks, I see with the contours, your lot is relatively flat, yes?
Yes.
So that's, so that when we talk about, runoff and that sort of thing, most of the water stays on your own property, or does it go towards your neighbors?
No, it's pretty flat, right until you get to the shoreline, so.
Okay. Yeah, with these small lots, it's tough to make the setbacks. And we have granted 7.2 feet before. I think, and so it's something that this board has done in the past. And your impervious looks good, your building coverage is fine. I think this is something that I could support as well. Oh, and I have one following question. When was the house built?
Oh, boy, I don't know the answer to that. The 60s, maybe?
Okay.
50? It's very old, yeah. The electrical is scary, to be honest.
All right, no, that's fair.
Thank you, Bob. And yeah, I think Bob addressed my one question that had to do with drainage and runoff, and
Okay,
I'm
yes.
happy with it, so I don't have any concerns. With that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion to grant the request to construct a 15 by 30-foot, 450 square foot addition to the north side of the existing home. That is 5.5 feet from the east side yard, 10.1 feet to the west side yard, and 31 feet to the ordinary high water mark of the lake. The septic pressure bed would be 7.2 feet from the west property line.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Could we add that we note the site plan as Exhibit A, building plans as Exhibit B, and the septic plan Exhibit C?
So noted.
So moved. No further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Lynn burning request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward and state your first and last name?
Lynn Burning.
All right, this is a 1.79 acre property in Silver Creek Township. It's zoned urban rural transition and located on Limestone Lake, which is classified as recreational development. Existing building coverage is 4.8% and existing impervious surface coverage is 10%. The request is to construct a new home 72.5 feet from the ordinary high water line of the lake. A variance is required as the proposed new home would be 72.5 feet from the ordinary high water line, whereas 100 feet is required. The township approves of the request because the dwelling is being moved further from the lake and it fits within the scope of the character of the other lots on each side of the house. And that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to add, comment on?
We're just requesting this to try to, make us, up kind of on a flat area of the lot, so that we can also, as we move further from the lake, we go down that slope, and so we're kind of blocked by that hill of getting to the lake, and we also start kind of encroaching into where the drainage area is in front of the house there. So we tried to pick a spot centered between those 2 points and also, not blocking, our neighbor's view of the lake. So we tried to pick a good spot there, we hope.
Okay, thank you. With no further comment, I'll ask the public if there's any comments or concerns you wish to make about the request. Seeing none, we'll take the conversation up here to the board, and Dan Vick, could you?
Yeah, thank you. Could I see that picture with the neighboring houses in there for alignment? Do we have it kind of penciled in where this house would be according to the neighbors?
I don't have it penciled in on an aerial view. The
Sure.
survey somewhat shows the northern existing home.
Okay,
The southern one's not listed on there.
It's closer to the lake and further south, but yeah,
Not
you can see it there
blocking
on
any
the,
view.
no. No, in fact, we'll be improving, for them as well too.
is it just a particular want that you want to get closer, or is there any kind of hardship that pushes you there? I heard you say something about a water spot.
Well, I guess the two things are, if we go further from the lake, the back of our house would be kind of like 4 feet below the crest of the hill, which would block the view of the lake, as you can see in the lower left-hand picture. The other thing is, as we move more towards the front of the lot, there's kind of a natural drainage area in the, as we move further out to the front of the lot, so we'd start to kind of encroach into that drainage area that drains, from the lot south of us, down to the lot north of us.
Okay. Yeah, that would be probably my main concern is about your neighbors, if they're, by even putting a bigger home, that you're not putting water on your neighbors' houses and your view. I guess I'd like to see what the rest of the board has to say, but those were my main thoughts. And 75 feet would be easy for you to make?
Oh, if you wanted 75 instead of, yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
I think that'd be fine, yeah.
okay.
Bob?
When we're looking at a new construction, I always say, why can't you meet the requirements? And it's not here, you have plenty of size. You know, so right away on new construction, we're asking for a variance. So every time that you'd add on to that house, you're gonna need a variance. If you're gonna put on, you know, just a small addition, if you're gonna remodel, if you're gonna do whatever, you're gonna need a variance because you're inside the setback. And so, other than you don't have the view that you want, what is your hardship that you can't meet the setback?
Well, it seems like if we were to meet the setback, you know, it seems like we would need, you know, more excavation on the lake side, you know, to make that space usable. So that seems more impactful to me than, you know, placing the house, you know, in a place where, you know, the slope is more conducive to, you know, enjoying the lot and you know, placing the house where I can enjoy the lake. So.
It just seems more like a self-created hardship that it's not what I want, it's rather than a hardship of that's the only place I can put it. And so with that, you know, sometimes, you know, just in the way you build your house, you can still maintain a view rather than, you know, being right on the lake type sort of thing. If you were on a different lake, your setback would be different. And that's the other hard part that I have to struggle with. If you were on some other lake, your setback would only be 75 feet, and you could meet it. So there's where I'm kind of torn a little bit about it. But when you're starting with a brand-new house, it's tough for me to figure out why this is a hardship. And this is, when I add up the square feet of your house, this is gonna be a pretty good-sized building, too. If I got a 2,189 square foot house, 246 square foot four-season porch, 1,000 square foot garage, almost a 900 foot second floor, I come up with 4,360 for a square footage of a house, and that's a pretty good-sized building. And maybe a building that size should meet the setbacks.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Bob hit some of the points I had, because I know on our handouts, we've got a 4-foot drop, and it was stated in there, you know, crest of a hill. 4 feet, to me, isn't a lot with excavation. Where that 4 extra feet of rise is basically right in front of the house, so there's gonna be some excavating there anyway. Just because you're basically building right on the top of the hill or right at the edge of the hill. And then looking at your house design, you know, with a kick out of the bedroom, an extra 8 feet by the covered porch, and I too look at, even in the back, our lowest point is where you're talking, there's some water pooling and stuff. That's only 9 feet lower than the other portion, and you look at some of the topos of the property. I'm looking for the practical difficulty. I really studied this and looked at this, trying to figure out where the practical difficulty, because it's like Bob says, we are on new construction. It is, so if you can help us there, somehow telling us why it has to be and needs a variance. I know some of the other homes, I've pulled it up on Beacon and looked up and down the shoreline. Many of the other homes are closer to the shoreline, but they're not asking for a new home right now. You know, so that's a struggle or a challenge for me also.
Thank you, Dan. You have anything to add?
No.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I struggle a little bit as far as trying to find a hardship, but I have a couple questions. One, Aaron, are there any rules or regulations or limitations as far as excavating on the crest of a hill like that?
So we have what's called land alteration. Now, if it's as part of an approved building permit, obviously there's going to be some sort of grading and filling as part of a house. So we're not going to factor that part in. Now, if what you're talking about doing is building a house in a location and now you have to do X number of cubic yards outside of the core area of the building, then we look at land alterations. I can tell you right now, if it's going to be less than 10 cubic yards, we don't have anything. Go for it. When you start getting over in these shoreland areas, shoreland impact areas, et cetera, over 10 cubic yards is when we start looking at, okay, well, is it going to be an administrative permit? We got to see, is it something that is going to take, some erosion control? Maybe like, okay, you're going to prevent it with a small retaining wall or something. Depending on the situation, it could make its way all the way to planning commission if it's over X number of cubic yards. It's really going to depend on where this excavation takes place, whether it's in the shoreline impact zone or not. And then if it's in the shoreline impact zone, it's over 50 cubic yards. It can't just be administrative through our office. It has to go through planning commission. So that's why I wouldn't be able to answer everything for you right now. You'd have to show it, part of a plan, right? If you're excavating, just kind of as an overview again, just for the house, the core area of the house, that's not a factor. We're not going to look at cubic yards necessarily. But if it's we're putting the house at, say, 100 feet, now in front of the house to the shoreline, we've got to remove 100 cubic yards or something like that. That's when we'd look at land alteration permits.
So it is possible that if you were to shave that down 3 feet and use that fill to fill in the lower spot further back, is a possibility. There is a process.
Potentially, I'm not going to be able to say yes right
Okay.
now, but it is an option that we could explore.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm struggling with practical difficulties, but the thought that I think you kind of picked up on there is to be able to move it back and shave that down just enough and use that to fill that lower spot. Can we switch to the aerial view? This wetland, how much water does that collect? And does it hold standing water in the spring? I'm worried about runoff and I'm worried about, encroaching on that space. We were to.
I've only owned the property for a couple years. I mean, I know it was damp in there
Yeah.
in the spring.
Which, okay. that's hard to
I
tell.
I can't really,
Okay.
I don't know over many years. I don't know. Bill, would you have comments on the excavating?
So, as it looks now, as your application has submitted, it looks like it won't pass. So we are kind of at a crossroads. We can do a couple things here. We can either vote on what you've given us today, or you can take what you've heard today and revise the plan, and then resubmit it to us next month or whatever is good, convenient for you, and see if that would satisfy the other board members as well. So,
I'd like to point out just briefly quick. So one of the chairs mentioned a continuation. Continuation, it's not any additional fee through our office. What they're asking is based off the discussion, is there a way you could alter your plan or maybe location slightly to try and get closer in line with what they had mentioned? And I did also want to point out briefly, just so it's on the record, so it's not an inventoried wetland. It might be a low spot. It might collect water, that kind of stuff, but it's technically not an inventoried wetland. If that was the case, filling may become more complicated. So it's not a wetland.
If I may ask, what's the setback on the two neighboring houses? Where are they now about? Because much like moving his house back to 100, is that gonna be now he won't be able to see because all the other neighbors are in there. Maybe 75 wouldn't be such a stretch, 70,
The neighbor to the north, I mean,
93.
it's pulling up a contour line here. It might be right around, if that's to an overhang, it could be anywhere from, let's say, 90 to maybe upwards of 100 feet. You can see shadowing, so it's not a perfect north or a perfect down image. And the one to the south, maybe 40 to 50 feet.
That might not be the high water mark though, correct?
Correct. I won't be able to provide the exact number unless we had a survey out there or surveyor get that for us.
Okay.
But Dan, for discussion, the property to the south or below it is a small home with a great big open lot. So you go along here with the 75 for the neighbor, then he's gonna come in at 75 looking for a variance also. And that's a great big wide open lot going with new. So what are we setting ourselves up for?
True.
You know,
I
because at 43, I don't think in previous board decisions, we'd, you know, agree on a new house going at 43 feet.
No, we wouldn't. I was just thinking 75, and if we had them do some drainage there, okay with the
But
county.
even with the drainage where he's proposing to putting a proposed building in the existing building set is only a couple of feet above the very lowest portion of the lot.
Yep.
You know, so I mean, it's an impression, it's not, you know, we've had confirmed that it's not a wetlands.
So you guys prefer to keep it around 100? I mean, that's,
It's new construction
That's
on a
true.
lake,
yeah.
and the lake requires a 100-foot setback DNR,
And we're
Wright
supposed to
County.
work the houses that way. I understand. I was just.
I don't know.
wanted to
I
tell
don't
you.
know.
Yep,
Thank you, Dan. Dan,
thanks.
any other comments, questions? So I guess the question for you is, how would you like to proceed? Would you like to have some more time to adjust this plan and come back again?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And Aaron can help with any questions that you
Okay.
might have too, so. And we're good with the 120-day deal, so I think you'll be able to
This is a
make it
brand new item.
for the next
I think
meeting?
we'd be ready for the next meeting. Yes.
Okay, great.
You looking for a motion,
So,
Chairman?
yeah, if I can get a motion to continue this item?
I'll make a motion to continue this until the February 2nd. Does that give you enough time?
Yeah, that's good.
February 2nd meeting?
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
All right, the next item on the agenda, we have the Ann Anderson request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf of the request please step forward and state your first and last name?
Good morning, Ann Anderson.
All right, so this is a 4.66 acre property in Rockford Township. It is non-riparian and zoned ag residential. The request is for approval on two after-the-fact buildings. One is a 12-foot by 16-foot three-season room that is 23.7 feet from the rear yard, and the other is a 12-foot by 20-foot freestanding covered patio. A variance is required as the three-season room is located 23.7 feet from the rear yard, whereas 30 feet is required. Variance is also required as both after-the-fact buildings bring the total detached building coverage on the property to 3,492 square feet, whereas 3,200 square feet is the maximum for parcels 2.5 to 4.99 acres. The township approves of this request. Neighboring comments were in support of the request. And being that this is an after-the-fact variance request, the board can also factor in whether bad faith on behalf of the applicant was involved. And that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add to that or comment on?
There was a lot of information in the packet I submitted. I don't know if you want me to just rehash that or not. Happy to answer questions. You mentioned bad faith. That was absolutely not the case. When we built the three-season room, we intentionally kept it under 200 square feet because that was one rule that we were aware of, that you didn't need a building permit for less than 200 square feet.
All right. Thank you. We'll ask you some questions. on
Okay.
that, So, thank you. If you have nothing else, what I'll do is open it up to the public for any questions, concerns, comments at all from anyone out there?
I will say, Wildlife Run,
One second.
oh, sorry,
I'll
sorry.
get back to you in a second here.
Sorry.
No problem. Seeing nothing from, yeah, would you have something, come up front and maybe state your name and give us your thoughts?
Yeah, my name is Maren Anderson. I'm the daughter of the applicant. I wanted to just bring attention to a couple of things about the property itself. And I know this is in your packets, but I just feel like it's appropriate to say, and she might not say. Her and my father bought the property 4 years ago. Existing house was under foreclosure, and not much information was provided about the property upon sale. The realtor who helped with the sale of the property or the purchase of the property on behalf of my parents is representing us, and many of us have done due diligence in order to find more information about how kind of we got to this particular point. When you look at the back of the house from the breakfast nook or from the living room, you see a small pond. Thank you. You see a small pond that then has a berm and then a bigger lake, a spring-fed lake. And as you can see, the landscaping from the previous owner actually extends towards that property line. And I think in terms of reasonable person and reasonable assumption, the property line would at least extend to that pond or further. Upon further kind of information finding, we noted that with the property line where Aaron is pointing on the screen right now, actually cuts through that landscaping. So you can see under kind of reasonable assumption, there might have been something here. The way this came about is my father, her husband, passed away in June, and she's working to sell the house, and a realtor asked about particular setbacks and additional additions to the property. And so just doing, what we can to kind of help move her forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
She's obviously a better public speaker than I am.
Oh, you're doing a good job. Thank you. With no further comments from the public, we'll take this conversation up to the board here. And Bob, could you get us started?
When I was reading your packet, we came across an HOA. So you actually made me do some research on what an HOA is. It's a homeowners association now. And does that have a board of directors?
So that's what I was starting to say as it came to me. None of the original HOA members live there anymore. There are 6 properties, and then the pond behind our house, and then the bigger pond in the upper right that's across the street. That's all shared open space, if you will, that's owned by that's part of the HOA. So yeah, all we have now is the treasurer, who's one of my neighbors, and we pay a small fee every year to cover the insurance for those 2 natural areas. So there really is no board anymore in existence. None of the original owners live there anymore.
Okay, so then, like, if you were going to build onto your home or whatever, you don't have to go to them for permission, or they don't have any?
No, and I read through all their, rules and everything, and it was primarily about new construction back in 2001 when that neighborhood was built. Our house was built in 2001, and the garage was built in 2004.
Okay, that was my next question, is when the home was built, but
Yeah.
you answered that. When was the 3-season room built?
That was during COVID, so I want to say was that before you guys moved here? It was 2020? 2020.
Okay,
And
And-
we did, you can see that the picture on the left is where the deck originally was. And so we took down a bit of that and added the 3-season room in line with that. Poured a couple extra footings. You can see the white footings under the 3-season room were original to the deck, to the existing deck.
and the covered patio, when was that built?
Oh gosh, that was probably, so we moved in June of 2019, so it was fall of that year.
Now, did you have a contractor to build these, or was this homeowner built?
We did have a contractor do both. My husband did some of the work on the 3-season room.
Okay, because, these contractors should know the rules.
Yeah, in hindsight, yeah.
Your square footage, 292 feet over, is 9%. And I think we've done maybe 10% before, other times. So you're close, really close. It kind of bothers me if you had a contractor build that they didn't, ask you or inform you if a building permit was needed, or at least have that discussion.
I'm with you there.
So I'll pass it on to the rest.
Right, thank you, Bob. Dan?
Yeah, Bob, took care of a lot of my questions. The part of that I struggle with is, and you had nothing to do with this per se earlier, as when the house and the garage were built, that they're so close to the property lines. You had a large piece of property, and to be pushing so tight back to the property lines, you can't do anything, and you're going to be needing a variance. I mean, I understand why you built what you built and what you did, but if the house would have been pushed out 30 feet, we wouldn't be here at all, because it's not there. And as far as, there in the garage and the moat area and the path that we see, on a foreclosure, I would have liked to seen the property surveyed so they knew where their property lines were, I mean, technically it should have been surveyed, you know where your property lines are, and then you wouldn't be here, because you would have been asking more questions but with everything mowed and the looking of the property, you can make that assumption as a property owner, well, I own that, it's just part of it. So I'm challenged with the after the fact, but looking at it where the home was built and they had nothing to do with that. I mean, if they wanted to do anything, they would have been in front of this board asking for a variance.
Yeah.
And looking at it and where the houses is set, there's, being open space behind them, being, a part of the HOA back there, there's not gonna be any homes, there's not any neighbors, we may, or I may have gone along with it at that time, and I guess that's kind of what I have to look at. I don't like the fact that we don't have permits, but I really don't believe this was in bad faith, because they didn't do anything big, they tried to stay under the 200 square feet. As far as being over the square footage of the property by a couple hundred square feet, I think we've done small amounts, and this is after the fact. If it was a new build, it might be a different story. But I do see a hardship here in what we're looking at, but I don't like the after the fact portion.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
You guys are adding to my thoughts. I never was quite set on what I was thinking here, but I drove by and looked at it yesterday because I was working in Rockford on the way home. I could see where you were misled and thought that pond was part of your property. So looking at the four-season porch, I think I'd be okay with that, other than I'd want to see a permit pulled and inspection on the footings especially.
Which we would be doing next.
Then we go over to the garage. I don't know how necessary that is, but that is attached to the garage.
It's not
Freestanding.
physically attached to the wall, actually.
Yeah, Robert, one of the Wright County building inspectors, was out there, and he said it was a freestanding structure.
But they got flashing up there.
You should be able to, yeah. I'm not a building inspector, so I'm not gonna jump in too much further, but based off
Can't
what he
quite
had mentioned,
see it.
he said that
Yeah.
it was.
He walked out there with me and said it was not attached.
But there is shingle
It's
tins
right
on
up
the side
against
of-
it.
Yeah, right up against it with shingle tins there flashing it.
It's attached to the concrete.
But see, if you attach it to the concrete will go up and down. The garage has got footings on it, and it's pretty much stationary. So that I wouldn't, to meet all the oversize, I don't know what of a loss that would be, but that would be willing to say, either have the footings checked better or remove to follow along. That's where I'm at on that one, because I don't know how you could check the footings, but what did have flashing on it, I seen that, so that would tell me that it's somewhat attached, maybe not physically, but
I mean, if that was theoretically taken down, like you mentioned, you're still gonna be over the 3,200 square feet detached building maximum, which still requires a variance. You're back down to about 3,252, which is,
the buyer's not here though, right? If it's being sold, I would hate to see somebody get hooked with that and not know what's there, so that's where my thinking is. I'm
They're
sorry for your
aware of
loss.
this process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess that's my 2 cents, is that it'd be a little bit hesitant unless somebody really did a good job on the inspection and went up there and made sure there's no connection. But I think it needs a permit pulled then. It's oversized or removed, one of the two.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you wish to add, comment on?
No.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I'll have a few comments. I don't believe any malicious attempt was made by the applicant to circumvent the planning and zoning. I think rather you're simply stuck with how to fix the problem, so. Both of these issues, they're rather small in size, and rather small in fractions. I think at least one of the two of them, if they had come before the board, we probably would have passed. This is a large lot plan unit development, so the likelihood of neighbors encroaching and causing problems, and why we have these rules in place, are probably non-existent. So Dan does bring up an issue and a concern about the footings. And then did you say there were footings or no footings on
You
it?
can't tell because it's
Don't know.
on a.
On
single
the,
slab.
on the roof structure?
Yeah, just the roof structure.
No, they're, the black pieces you can see at the base. I mean, those are screwed into the concrete, but that's it.
I'll try and address something really quick for you guys. So if it's a structure that's over 200 square feet, that's detached, which Robert is calling it freestanding, it requires a building permit. So during that building permit process, it would be inspected to make sure it's done properly. So it's not necessarily up to you guys to decide whether it was, built properly. As well as what the three-season area, it's under 200 square feet, but Robert did mention it's technically attached to the deck. It's not like a standalone structure. So being that it's attached to the deck, which is attached to the home, it requires a permit as well. So both of those structures would be required to obtain building permits.
And they would sort all that.
Which, yeah, the safety aspect would be verified. I don't know the process entirely. I'm not a building inspector, but it would have to be properly permitted, so.
That I'd be okay with.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm fine with the request. Do I hear a motion?
Is there one thing I could
Yes.
add? Talking about the setback and the three-season room. So when all this was brought to our attention, based on a call asking if they could put a swimming pool in the backyard, all that we could get, the only documentation that we could get from the county was this drawing, which was the plan for the, the plan for the septic.
The board would have got a copy of it was a survey submitted with the septic plan as part of, I think, a 2001-ish permit. The initial home was supposed to be meeting all setbacks at
Yeah.
about 31 feet.
Yeah.
Obviously, the new survey that was done recently shows that the home at its closest point, not including the, the deck or anything like that, is 28 and a half feet. And then this new structure, its closest point would have been the 23.7.
So that property line, which we had surveyed finally, that came as a shock to us. I mean, anybody looking at that backyard, he had extended, the previous owner had extended that boulder landscaping 70 feet from the house, matching boulders around that small pond. He had a pump put into the pond. I would have expected the listing realtor to make clear where the property line was, and they did not. And yes, in hindsight, we should have confirmed that. But I mean, a property that size, and looking at the fact that he had maintained it and mowed that entire area, it came as a shock that that back property line came that close.
Thank you. With that said, can I entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve of the after the facts on both the porch and the garage additions with the need of an inspection and the okay of the county that they're up to code. And with that, then the setback would be okay on the porch. I think that's about all I can say unless you want to add some of that to it.
I could throw out clarification just really quick. So
Yeah.
Dan mentioned both after the fact buildings for an approval. One is a 12-foot by 16-foot three-season room. That's 23.7 feet from the rear yard. The other is a 12-foot by 20-foot freestanding covered patio. They did mention that all necessary building permits would be required. It should be something they discuss a specific date on or number of days that those have to be required within, and that the survey is noted Exhibit A.
Could we put anything on there if that does not, that other addition, if it doesn't meet setbacks, that they have to remedy it, or will that be an automatic?
The other addition that covered.
Off the garage.
That's no problem. It's meeting all setbacks.
No, as far as footings and everything
if
on there,
it's-
if it doesn't meet that, they have to repair it or tear it down?
That'd be up to it's approved in that location. Either they have to replace it brand new in the meeting all building code or take it down. It's up to them.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I mean, you can't just leave it if it's not meeting code, so it's gotta be resolved.
I was just thinking to protect a future buyer then, so.
Yeah.
That's
All right,
my
yeah.
motion.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it. Any further discussion?
Do you guys have a specific date or number of days that the building permits must be obtained by?
I think I might leave that, I mean, do you have a
Yeah.
suggestion that would help you out?
I mean, the closing on the house is scheduled for January 31st, so I would
Before closing?
hope to get everything done as fast as I
All
can.
building permits applied for within 30 days?
Does that work for you?
For sure. I mean,
Okay.
I'll be doing it right now.
Okay,
So moved, yep. Second.
okay.
Yep.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Thank
Motion
you.
carries. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Lee Nelson request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf of that request please step forward and state your first and last name?
Brandon Schubel with KC Home Design, representing Lee Nelson.
All right, so this is a 0.29 acre property in Southside Township. It is zoned urban rural transition and located on West Lake Sylvia, which is classified as general development. The existing building coverage is 7.2% and existing impervious surface coverage is 11.4%. This request is to construct a 40 square foot covered porch, a 128 square foot screen porch, and a 276 square foot deck onto the existing home. The footprint of the existing home and deck would be 5.6 feet from the west side yard and 61.7 feet from the ordinary high water of the lake. Variance is required for the proposed additions onto the existing home because the proposed footprint of the home and deck would be 5.6 feet from the west side yard, whereas 15 feet is required, and 61.7 feet from the ordinary high water of the lake, whereas 75 feet is required. The township approves of the request, and that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does, Brandon, you have anything wish to add?
Yeah, so Lee was not able to make it today just because she lives in Seattle, but she has been on the lake with multiple different properties for about the last 45 years. She considers Annandale her home and wants to have another cabin on the property or on Lake Sylvia just to be able to come back for the summers to be able to enjoy the lake and also the property as far as in the summers with family and friends. Lee and I have partnered with Bernie Miller. Unfortunately, he's not able to be here today just because he's actually out of town right now. So we looked at multiple different options with this property as far as tearing down the existing house and then building a new property or a new house on the property as far as attaching a garage to the house, but then we determined that that would also need variances as far as the size of the property. So through further discussions with Lee, she doesn't necessarily want a large cabin on the property. She wants to work within what is there currently and do additions to be able to make it more usable for her and kind of preserve the existing property as much as possible. So the existing cabin is a small cabin of only 768 square feet with the small attached screen porch. We're proposing to attach a covered entry to the street side of the house, which Aaron had mentioned is 4x10, which is 40 square feet, to the existing cabin, which actually replaces a 40 square foot ramp that is currently on the property accessing the cabin currently. So we're trying to, let's say, replace as much kind of even with the overall concept here. The proposed screen porch addition is just expanding the existing screen porch that's currently on the cabin. And both of these additions, both the covered entry and then also the screen porch addition, do meet all the lake setbacks and side yard setbacks. The only reason that we need variances for those particular additions are just because it's being attached to a non-conforming structure because it's closer to the lake than the required setback, and also closer to the one side yard setback of the property. The proposed deck, there's a small, or about an 8-foot wide section that is being attached from the existing screen porch to the deck right now. So we're reducing the access from the screen porch to the deck on the lakeside, and just because it's not as usable there, since it's more of just a walkway, and taking that square footage and putting it towards the lakeside, which would be in the location that the current deck stairs are on the home. And also there's a small concrete pad that is down in that area too. So the current deck that's on the house and the stairs are 305 square feet plus the 31 square feet for the deck, or for the concrete pad, for a total of 336 square feet. The proposed deck and stairs concept that we're looking at doing is 337 square feet. So we're basically adding about 1 square feet of impervious coverage with the kind of transfer of the location of the deck, and eliminated a portion on the side of the house to the screen porch. There's an existing cesspool and then also a shallow well that would be abandoned on the property. And then there will be installed a new holding tank and a new deep well on the property as well. The existing building, and I know Aaron had mentioned this, but the existing building impervious coverage is 7.2 square feet, and the proposed would bring that up to 13.8%. This does include a future detached garage, and then also a future boathouse on the property, with still being below the 15% allowance as far as building impervious coverage. And then the existing overall total impervious is 11.4%, with the proposed going up to 24.2%, which also includes a allowance for driveway, walkways, and patio spaces, still also being below the 25% allowance. And then Lee just wanted to let me know, or let you guys know, that she appreciates the request as far as the variances and your consideration. So,
Thank you, Brandon.
yep.
I'll open up to the public. Is there any comments, questions, concerns the public might have on this? Please step forward. Not seeing any, we'll close at the public comment and move it up to the board here. And Dan, could you get us started?
Yeah. Looking at it now with this, I'll go a different direction here. On the sewer, we're looking at just a holding tank? No type of a drain field or anything like that. It's just,
That is correct. Just to do it, the holding tank, the drain field, that was looked into, but with doing the drain field, the neighboring well would have to be replaced to be able to do that. And I think that from my understanding, without, let's say, increasing the living space of the existing structure, that the holding tank would be able to stay.
now, thing you mentioned, she lives in Seattle and stuff. Will this be like a full-time residence in the summer?
No, she's going to be using it sporadically through the summer, so it's probably a couple weekends, in the summer, but most of the time it's going to be unused.
Okay, because it gets to be a concern with the holding tanks and the pressure that's getting put on it
Yep.
type of scenario. But, and then along with the decks, we are coming about 2 feet closer to the lake, if I'm reading it right.
Yeah, so the closest location as far as the addition of the deck is the 61.7 feet. There is the existing stairs and that concrete, which is at grade level. I think on the survey it shows that the corner of the house where that new addition of the deck is located is 67.5 feet from the ordinary high water line.
Yeah.
But the other portion of the deck that's currently there is the 63.5 feet though.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking at approximately 2 feet getting closer. I guess in the past, I don't like to infringe any more closer to the lake than what we're already existing, or it's already there. So that would be a concern of mine, if there's any way we can at least get to where, existing is today. That would be probably my main concern, because as far as the side property lines, we're not getting any closer than the existing home is. I mean, it's too close, but that's why we're here. That's non-conforming. So I guess that would be my concern.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Well, I follow Dan. That was my thought, that moving any closer to the lake is we just don't do it too often. I don't know where this one would stand above that, so
Come.
I'd like to see if follow existing on that.
Thank you, Dan.
No question. No question.
Bob?
You know, I always look at this not only for the current homeowner, but for down the road, 2, 3, 4 owners. These lake properties change hands very often. And I agree with board members, Dan and Dan, is that, you know, on any type of new construction, you know, we've held to those setbacks from the lake, and it's, you know, so the house should be at 75, but it's not. It's at 63 or whatever. And so I guess I'm okay with the proposed porch and the covered entry, but I think you should tell Ms. Nelson that putting a deck over top of those stairs is a no-go for me.
Come.
Thank you, Bob. I have a few questions. One is, just to clarify, that pad area that's at the bottom of the stairs is the area that's actually defining it 2 feet closer. Is that accurate? Because Dan had alluded to that the structure was 2 feet closer to the lake. Is it the pad area that is causing that?
Yeah, so the corner of the house where let's say the 61.7 feet is shown right now from the ordinary high water line. If you go back the 6 feet as far as the depth of the deck, just because what we were trying to do is, let's say, match the existing square footage of the deck that we're moving on the other side as close as possible. That's why we didn't do also, let's say, the 8 feet back or 8 foot deep porch that the current deck is. But that is 67.5 feet to the corner of the building. But if you go the distance where the current corner of the deck right there is to the ordinary high water line is 63.5 feet.
All right.
So I'm hoping maybe I could bring a little bit of clarification to this as well. So Dan's correct. I mean, technically that distance is dropping about 2 feet. So right now, patios, there's not a setback to a patio. It's an at-grade structure. Steps, stairways, landings, as long as they meet the requirements, you know, less than 4 feet wide, et cetera, they're subject to permitted encroachment. They don't have that same setback. So what's happening is by now putting a deck over what is currently existing impervious, which is, you know, patio and stairs, while a deck attached to the home does have a setback. So by moving it out even 6 feet, based on the location of that shoreline, it happens to actually pull that house distance almost closer, right? So it's not coming out the same distance the existing deck is at 8 feet, even at 6 feet coming out based off the shoreline, which you can kind of see me highlighting down here. It happens to now be 61.7 feet.
All right, thank you. The other thing that I want to make sure is that when the three-season porch, is it, or is it, you're converting it into a four-season?
Nope, it'll be or it'll just actually be a screen porch
Yeah.
still.
I want to
Yep.
make sure that it can't easily be converted into a four-season down the line.
Sure.
So I'd want some sort of, I don't know, how would we spec that out as far as, Dan, you have a suggestion that we can?
Me?
Yeah.
You're the builder.
It's pretty tough to do that other than just in writing and when they go in for a permit, you know?
Yeah, I think we just need to note that that can't be converted
Sure.
down the line into a four-season porch. I really don't have an issue with, I know normally we never go 2 feet closer to a lake. But in this case, I think the situation's unique. It doesn't impact the lake visually at all. It's very, and I like the fact that how you have laid out and anticipated other impervious surface areas as well. So often they'll come in and we'll go right to the limit, knowing full well that down the line, they're going to add it without us knowing it. And so I do appreciate that, and it helps us. So I actually don't have a problem with the plan as is. So with that said, can I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair? Now, Aaron, for clarification, that pad that is there at 61.7 feet, Now they're proposing to put a roof over that, is my understanding?
So essentially, right, it's an at-grade patio,
It's, yeah,
or
it
it's a
says on this,
landing, or whatever you want to call it at this point.
yeah, on the survey, it calls out a concrete pad just where the stairs come down as far as a landing zone, that's 31 square feet. So we are looking at just doing a deck, but it's not covered with a roof line or anything.
You can kind of see in this lower left-hand photo, that portion of that deck there. So, I mean, you could still have concrete underneath. It's not gonna, you don't double count impervious, but you do technically have a deck that's not at grade now, right? It's coming off that main level.
So you're coming to under, I guess I'm looking at, because we're allowed to have a landing coming down off without, I mean, they're allowed to have, what, a 4x4 landing? So I
So
mean,
they're
that-
not, yeah, they're not having the landing anymore. This is just gonna be a upper level usable part of a deck. If you look in this bottom left-hand photo, you can
Yep.
kind of see that deck continues. Their landing is now gonna be more central.
Okay,
So this is gonna be a full-on usable deck space at, at this point, and which, based on that, does have a setback.
yep, okay, that clarifies that for me then.
Just a question for you now, if that's a 3-foot walkway over to the other deck, well, that would serve the decking purpose and still let them get in and out of there and same visual.
Yep.
So you could do it back to where it was without gaining.
Or say that, sorry, can you say that one more time? Sorry.
I'm saying like where you got that deck out 6 feet, then it goes out to 8. That
Yep.
could be 3 feet all the way across there and we wouldn't get any closer to the lake, correct? On that?
You could. It's not necessarily a walkway right now, just because the stairs are shifting closer to the screen porch side of the house. So it's looking at it, trying to create a usable space for seating. And once you get down to a smaller depth like that, then it starts to be more unusable with that.
I was just thinking for looks, it looked the same, but,
Right.
so this wouldn't be asking a lot to shrink that.
Mr. Chair,
What it was.
if you look at these drawings, the steps now that were right next to the house have moved out 8 feet from where they were. So there's still steps going down to to ground level. It's just that they're moved out. And so, now the steps are no longer at, your 61 feet. Your steps are going to be at 58 or something like that. So, therefore, that portion of the deck that is replacing the steps definitely is an addition to the house.
Thank you, Bob. Any further discussion or comments?
I guess I would make a motion, but I'd have to know if it was okay to go with that shrunken down to not to exceed any more than you are. So I think it'd just be taking 2 feet off, right?
Going down to the 63.5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. With it being, the 61.7, the only thing I'm not exactly sure with it being at the, perpendicular to the ordinary high water line, I think 4 feet, would be probably the bare minimum, if that would be possible. But I guess without, let's say, drawing it out, I can't guarantee that that's going to be exactly 61.5 feet from or 63.5 feet from the ordinary water line.
Aaron, what's the corner of that 8-foot deck to the lake? 63?
That's what, the survey had listed as 63.5 feet.
How about if we just say no more than 63.5?
You guys are the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah,
It's up to you guys.
But I guess I was mine not to exceed 63.5, since that's existing. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve it not to exceed 63.5, or not less than 63.5 to the lake, as proposed, drawn.
Thank you, Dan. Do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it? Any?
I'll just kind of give a clarification for anyone else that was out there too. So the request was to construct, and a motion was made to approve a 40 square foot covered porch, a 128 square foot screen porch. The deck size is subject to change slightly onto the existing home. The footprint of the existing home and deck would be 5.6 feet from the west side yard, and it would be no closer than 63.5 feet from the ordinary high water line of the lake. And then we would just note the site plan and as Exhibit A, building plans Exhibit B.
Can I-
like having you there. Yes, that's what,
I guess for clarification, Dan, also was brought up about the added porch, not being able to be converted to a four-season.
To make a note on the building permit not to have a enclosed porch
Okay.
in the future.
Can I ask one question here? With, let's say, the loss of the depth of the 2 feet, if that's what it is, to meet the 63.5 feet, would we be able to, let's say, take that square footage there and reallocate that to the side going towards the screen porch?
So you'd have less room on the, may I hold back on my motion until we discuss that, or is it
Well, we
just
have a motion on the
motion on
floor.
the floor? I'd have to hear everybody else's input. I can't answer that
Okay.
before I would make that motion.
We have a motion,
Would you like to withdraw it until we discuss that?
you want to withdraw it?
I'll withdraw my motion until we discuss the other factors. I would like to see what everybody else has to say about
Fine with
that.
that, it's all right.
Okay,
I'm okay with that as a second.
So, go ahead.
okay,
Well,
so,
before you make a motion, let's discuss this portion, or my question would be, do we want to continue this so that we can see it? I mean, this is kind of going
Yeah.
off the cuff or off the fly. You know, we're making them stay at 63.5 is what the previous motion was, and everybody kind of seems to be down that line. Now he's asking, you know, on the fly, can I add this, or can I take this square footage and move it over here? Well, how is that going to affect our side yard setback on the other side? So,
I agree with
you know, I would think we should probably continue it so we can talk with the homeowner.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise we're making decisions and we're not seeing it on paper.
You good with that? Continue it, and then come back with the changes so we can see it?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that it wouldn't be going closer to the north side of the property. It would be to the south side of the property, which wouldn't encroach any further than the current deck that's there right now.
But I still think we need it on paper for the record and, you know, so we know what we're approving.
So if it's all right with you, we'll make a motion to continue this item till
Okay.
next month.
February,
Or could we also, last question for you, sorry, you guys. If we weren't to do it that way and still just go back to the 63.5 feet off the lake as far as having it approved today?
We'd have to make a motion one or the other, and you wanna, we can't have it both ways.
Right,
You
yeah.
Either make the motion for what was just proposed, or we wait for the other. So it's up to
Yeah.
you. Do you want us to make a motion for what
Yeah,
was
I would,
originally
if,
proposed?
if it would go, let's say, back to what Dan had originally said, then I would say we'd be fine with that, just because it'd be only adding about a foot in width to the deck to the screen porch with, let's say, going back to the 63.5 feet from the ordinary high water line.
And we're not adding that other part?
No,
Okay, so it's, okay.
just the
as
reduction.
drawn, just no more than 63.5 feet to the lake,
That is correct, yep.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve as drawn, no more than 63.5 to the lake. I guess that's my motion. Back to that.
Do you want to say a thing?
Oh,
Well,
about the, and no finishing of the three-season porch to stay screened-in porch.
Can we note the site plan Exhibit A and building plans Exhibit B then, based off of what you're discussing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'll second it again.
Second, any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was good discussion.
Yeah, that was. I was gonna make them.
All right, next time on the agenda, we have the Belinda Bergren request. Could the applicant, or anyone speaking on behalf, please state your first and last name?
Yeah, my name's Belinda Bergren.
Al Ebervold, Cap Custom Homes.
Okay. I'll give a brief overview. So this property is 0.44 acres in Southside Township. It is zoned urban rural transition and located on West Sylvia, which is classified as a general development lake. The existing building coverage is 9% and existing impervious surface coverage is 27.3%. The proposal would drop impervious surface coverage down to 23.1%. I guess with that said, there was an unpermitted storage building that was constructed between 2021 and 2023 within that north side yard setback that further exceeded that 25% impervious surface maximum. That's the one kind of circled right now being proposed to be removed. If the requests were not approved, the referenced shed would still be in violation. The request is to construct an addition to the existing home. The addition would not further encroach any setback. The existing home is 2.3 feet from the north side yard and 5.5 feet from the south side yard. Variance is still required for the proposed addition onto the existing home because the existing home is 2.3 feet from the north and 5.5 feet from the south side yards, whereas 15 feet is required. The township approves of the request as the addition would be an improvement over the existing house side setbacks and the impervious surface coverage would be at 23.1%. That will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you some just background on how I got to this point. My husband and I purchased this property about a little bit over 4 years ago, just looking for a place that we can eventually come and retire at. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, my husband passed away, trimming some trees in the backyard, and that just completely changed plans for me. And now that I have moved into the area full time, I'm a teacher in Annandale. I'm just trying to make sure that I have a safe place where I can live, utilizing the current building. I mean, things are kind of crooked. They're not, lining on the property lines and so forth. And, my biggest concern is the safety of being able to get to my living area, which I currently have to use the steps that are outside because my car does not, I can fit my car into the garage, but I have to open the door a little bit and kind of squeeze out. So I can't bring anything up unless I do it from the outside. So I'm hoping that being able to just having a garage, there's no bedrooms, no bathrooms, but just having the garage will allow me to have access to my living space from the inside. So yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you wish to add?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that said, I'm going to open up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that has any comments, questions, or concerns they would like to add? Seeing none, we'll bring it up to the board here. And Dan Vick?
Yeah, thank you. I had a lot of concerns looking at it because it's so close to the lot lines. I don't know how you'd get back to the back of the house to do any work on the holding tanks and stuff without going across your neighbor's property. I don't know, the house is there too, so. Now, looking at the deck there and then seeing some other pictures now, is there any way that the LP tank could be moved out of the way so that there leaves some room? The sheds are right there, the LP tank's there, so that side's kind of eliminated for getting across. The houses are too close together on the other side.
I think that the LP tank could, be spec'd elsewhere so that it's not, closer, to the neighbors, definitely.
And what do you have proposed from the addition? Because it looks like a deck and an addition there, but which one
For where are you referring to?
on that line? Which one?
On the LP tank side?
Yeah,
5.7.
and existing is 2.3?
Correct.
Okay.
So so instead of coming off straight with the property, you can see that the house sits in there crooked, right? So basically what we did is we pulled back from where our tie-in point could be to get minimum area that we can still excavate, right? We can still get in there at 5.7 feet. We can excavate from the inside, that foundation line, right? Then step back out and dig back across. So
So that other line there is nothing.
That other line, that's showing the existing. That's the existing, if, Aaron, if you could go back to that, front, you see that, it's kind of a green space up there where that lawn chair is.
Sure.
It's basically, they constructed that foundation wall as a retaining wall to create more yard up at the main floors. So there's nothing underneath that right now, and that's would all be gone, so. The biggest, the hurdle, what we're trying to do is create her, again, an entry point at the
Sure.
driveway level. Right now, she has to go into her house, she has to go up those current stairs. So how do we create an entry point on the main floor to go up, so you can go, so she's not shoveling the sidewalk?
How do they drain the holding tank as existing now?
What's that?
How do they get to the holding tank and stuff in the rear yard?
What's a septic?
Yeah, it's a full
It's a
set.
Oh,
full
it is,
septic.
okay.
Yeah, and
The-
we-
Existing drain field
and we
area.
had a full inspection, like Bernie Miller went in and, he, did inspected and said, because there's no bedrooms, no bathrooms being added. So he said that it would be in compliance with what we're trying to do.
But there's no pumping of the tanks then?
You could pump the tanks from the driveway side.
Okay.
They would just
Yeah,
have to run the
yeah.
hose up along the side, because currently there's an access point, when you go currently up on top of the stairs. If you go up, then you can access around the back of the
Yeah.
house to get around the side. So right now there would be, with how the addition is being on that left side, being about 6 feet off at the tying point of the house, you'll be able to now have full walk space from the driveway up the side property line without going on the other property to get to the back.
And drainage and everything, I guess it's already
It's
existing.
basically completely flat. That whole front yard is,
Yeah.
there's nothing that's really changing with that. We're narrowing up the driveway. So that's narrowing down to 10 feet. And then we kind of all took that into consideration to get down to that 23% or 23.1 versus the current 27.3, but.
Yeah, and removing the shed, as well, and so that all the drainage should work properly. And, obviously I'm on the other side of the street from the lake, so that shouldn't affect, how close we are to the lake.
Wow, that helps a lot. Thank you. I'd like to see what the rest of the board has to say. Thanks, Chairman, for putting up with all my questions.
Thank you, Dan. Bob?
Yeah, it's difficult when the house is in the location that it is and the setbacks are so close. I guess I don't have a problem with the addition, but perhaps because of the grade that's behind the home, some sort of a water management plan should be considered, so that the water doesn't, even though the house has been existing, you're not doing anything in the backyard, but still maybe some sort of a water management plan should be done so that the water isn't escaping onto the neighbors. Probably should have been done when the existing home was built, but maybe this is the time to require them to capture their own water.
Thank you. Bob? Dan?
Yeah, most of my concerns or questions have been addressed. We're adding on to the backside of the home. We're not encroaching any further onto the side yard property lines. It runs into a difficult situation. I know they're trying to hold it back, but adding into any house, to get it 15 feet off the property line and the size of the lot doesn't give them much of an addition type scenario. So, I mean, with the existing house, there is a practical difficulty there. I mean, I can see that challenge. Again, I've always been very concerned about being able to get around the house, but it's already there. So putting the addition on, it's not encroaching the lake. We're removing stuff to get ourselves within the impervious portion of it. So, yeah, I think we're going down the right track.
Thank you, Dan. Bruce? Any comments?
No further question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess everyone's kind of brought up all the questions I had, so I'm fine with it, so.
Mr. Chairman, one question. Am I just not seeing it? What's the size of the addition?
Where are those plans at? Oh, there they are.
You have a proposal shown on here for the existing, existing house after addition at 1950, and you have the existing house and garage at 1315. I'm not sure if that's correct. I guess it's kind of on you as the builder.
Would be, yeah, so 1950 would be the existing then foundation square foot, all said and done. That would be with the included garage. The total addition would be 680 square feet onto the home. Which would be mainly garage, again, on the driveway side, and then living above the garage.
680, and you're removing roughly,
Removing roughly on the sides, well, if we're going back from 1950,
So the whole driveway and the shed.
your 1315, how it is currently existing with the house and the garage, and then now we would be going to the 1950.
Any
So,
further questions?
that's-
Okay, great, thank you, Bob.
Should I ask a question about Main Street?
With that said,
Yeah, oh,
May I ask a question? I just,
yep.
can we go back to the survey, so just noting that, what? Just noting that, like we noticed, how the house was built kind of crooked that way. So a question that I had is, would it make sense to try to straighten the house by moving what we talked about, the garage, and just moving it this way more so that it makes it more straight versus, I'm not
so,
explaining
yeah,
this
so the
correctly.
question is, if I can make the plans work with trusses and everything to actually put the house, to do the addition straight with meeting the property lines versus crooked again.
So exactly what
is
we're
that-
talking about, but just trying to not make it be so,
If the tie-in
crooked.
points stayed the same, setback stayed the same with the tie-in points onto the existing house, and we went straight with the property lines, would that be approved?
Well, what we're voting on right now is the angled one, and I don't think we would mind that. I didn't hear anything in the discussion that would say we would object to that. However, for record sakes, how would we word that to approve that? Parallel? I mean, we'd have to make a decision now
Yeah.
that it
Right,
would be
right.
parallel,
Tie-in points would stay the same to the side
but it'd be
setbacks.
parallel. I mean, is that a motion that we could, I mean, we haven't seen a plan, so that's where, normally we'd like to see a written plan
Yep.
showing that. So I'm thinking we might have to come back.
Well, here's the question. What's the most ideal situation first?
I mean,
Is it to have it try and
To me,
parallel the ones?
ideally, you look at all the other houses, right? Everything's straight with the lot lines. Why this house is not straight is beyond me. But to me, I look at it as, well, if I can work with Litfin Trust and find tie-in points and actually structurally apply for a building permit with it straight, would that be approved? That's, to get things back straight, that's my thing.
would you increase or decrease one side?
it
It would stay the same.
it would be the same,
If we
just
stayed the side,
make
if,
it straight.
at our tie-in points. So where we tie in at the house, so on the right side, you would be approximately 8 feet, and on the left side, you'd be approximately 6 feet off the property lines.
I'd like to see something written
Yep.
to vote on.
So if we were to come back,
Yeah.
I guess that's my question is if we were to make the tie-in points at the same points, what you see now, and we did not increase the building size, and we did come back, would that be approved?
I wouldn't have any objections with it. I mean, again, I think, I didn't hear anything, but we'd still have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I can't guarantee anything.
Correct,
You've heard the conversation that we had.
Yep.
And it's up to you. If you want to do that, then I would recommend that we continue this item, and then you bring the proposal, give us a chance to talk about it. Worst case scenario is we revert back to the original plan.
back to this one. So
Yeah,
we're not
so-
necessarily gonna vote on this one today.
No,
We could
We'll
come
continue
back.
it. You
We'll
see
come
what
back.
you have, and that way, when whatever one passes, we have a written exhibit that we can submit with it.
Would there be concerns with going straight? I guess that would be, is there things that I should take into consideration?
Let's save that conversation. Again, you heard the conversation, what was current, all the elements that people were concerned about. And I didn't hear anything to suggest otherwise.
Okay.
I really don't want to open up a whole new discussion
Right.
without seeing what we have before us, you know? So they like to measure things, look at things, you know, it could change your perspective a little bit, so.
Okay.
If that works for you, it works for us, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So come back with like a straight drawing.
Yeah,
So then
so
that
if-
way you can vote on that.
Yeah, and again, Plan B would be this, too.
This one,
Just-
okay.
Just for discussion purpose, you're gonna open up a can of worms, and then you have to shrink one wall or the other.
Correct.
Right,
Correct,
right.
yep.
Then I'll lose your square footage, but then to tie into the roof, you're gonna have.
That's right. It's gonna take some legwork on my side to figure out
Yeah.
if we
more
can
expensive.
make it happen.
But if you have the time,
Yep.
do what you want to do, and then bring it before us, and then you'll get what you want, you know? So,
Yep.
Great, well, thank you. We'll continue this, and
You looking for a motion to continue? I'll make a motion to continue until the February 2nd meeting? I already forgot. Yeah, second.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second it. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. See you
Thank you.
next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to point out too, if you guys are gonna update your plans, try and get them as soon as you can. I'd like to try and get a preliminary staff report out to the board, you know, a week before that next meeting. So the earlier the better.
We're gonna be back next week, so plans
Okay, sounds good. All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Kyle Asheville request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please state your first and last name?
Kyle Asheville.
All right, so currently there is a 105 acre and a 40 acre parcel that are located in Cokato Township and zoned general agriculture. There was a deed restriction done in 2023 that split off a 4 acre home site, which is now parcel 205-000-141-300. And it left 3 entitlements remaining on what are now parcels 205-000-114400 and parcel 205-000-141-301. I wanted to point that out. The initial site plan you guys saw, the division had not yet been entered into the system. Now it is, so you wouldn't have seen that 4 acre division up until now. The request is to create a 21.6 acre entitlement division, which includes 4.8 acres of prime farmland. Variance is required as the proposed entitlement division exceeds the 10 acre maximum and includes 4.8 acres of prime farmland, whereas 2.5 acres is the maximum. The township approved of the request because the entitlement division is the highest and best use for that corner of the property, and the property will be made usable. The city of Cokato commented, and they said they don't see any issues with the request. And that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add, comment on?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you. I'll open it up to the public that have any questions, concerns about the application request. If you could just step aside for a moment, and then if you could just state your name and,
Dean Malstead, Cokato Township Supervisor. My request would be during the discussion, if you've got questions about the property, we know quite a bit about this property and we've watched the history of it. It really is, it's not a prime farmland by any stretch of the imagination. And it really is the highest and best use to be able to make that lot usable. It's a great position for it, and he's thought through it well. So my suggestion would be, or my request would be, if you've got questions about it in the discussion, Dan Bravender, who's the chairman, and I'm here to answer.
great, thank you. I have one step aside, one more person.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you
Can you state
for
your name?
letting us, Dan Bravender, Chairman Cokato Township. this property here, in our eyes also, I want to add that it is kind of unique for this division or for this split. Next to the road, it is lower ground and the building site being in the upper right corner of the property is not going to take that much ag land away. And I know the feeling about taking ag land away is not good. But I think with this situation, it is kind of unique, and it won't inhibit the use of the ag land beside that. Okay?
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else wish to share a comment or two?
Hi, I'm Tiffany Waterman. I own the neighboring property on 3235 on 25th Street. I guess I was just curious as just a little bit more description about what, that's why I'm here, about what the change would be and what would the land be used for? Or-
Just comment, we did give an overview beforehand.
Yeah.
So they're asking to create a building site. And I think if you listen, we'll have some I tell you what I'll do is we'll have a conversation here. And
Sure.
then if you have a question afterwards, I'll open it up to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
fine.
you.
Yep. Thanks.
Anything else from the public? Have anything to add? All right, so what I'll do is we'll close this up and have a discussion up here. And Bob, could you get us started?
So why did you pick the unique shape that you have, and why is 10 acres not acceptable?
That the 10 acres, there's no building site down off of the road. That's all lowland and wash out. I mean, that's about it. You couldn't build a house down here in front where he's got his mouse. Yeah, right down in that area.
So why not have a move further to the, I guess, west and draw a line up, or what?
That's all from that tree line. From that tree line that runs over a little bit more, yeah. From there to the west property line, all the way to the road is swamp and wetland.
Okay,
Unbuildable, all the way to the north property line.
okay, all right. But, so would the access point be then right along the east property line? Is that-
Yes, the driveway would come in up there and go through the trees.
And there's there's no way of just getting 10 acres there that would be buildable without being in that field?
It would be tight with setbacks for wetlands and whatnot. And road, and off of the road and the neighboring property, yes. Because that dark line down there, that area stays wet most of the year. This year, they farmed a majority of it because it was a drought, but usually it's always wet out there.
Okay. And so where would the access points be for the other three entitlements?
They're not on,
Does that
you
come
got
off of
road
that
frontage.
25th Street as
yeah,
well?
25th Street on the other side of the 4 acres.
You have 300 feet frontage for all three of those?
Well, we'd only need 2.
Because is this the third one?
Yeah, this is the third one.
So that would use one. They'd have this stretch, which is over 300 feet. And then technically, if you can see my cursor, they own this 40 up here as well. And there is public road frontage to the north of that.
But there's 3 in that
Yep,
pink area, correct?
Yes, they have 3 entitlements. One's proposed in this kind of blue area. That's going to have their road frontage. Then there would be 2 remaining. This remainder, I guess, of this pink area, magenta area, that could be 1 with 300 feet of road frontage. And then this 40 up here that I don't have highlighted, they own it. It doesn't have to be owned in common, but there's an entitlement up there that also has road frontage to the north of that parcel. So by doing this, they're not going to create any, I guess, unusable entitlement from road frontage perspectives.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Bob. Dan?
It comes into, looking at it is where you're gonna build a house is 4 acres of prime tillable land. But as looking at it, it's the only place you can build a house. I mean, you can see everything off to the west is wet. And driveway up along the side and the plans we have where you're gonna put the sewer and that portion and stuff. I can understand what they're doing, and there's no way to put a straight line, because if you came straight off the road, there's no building, no place to build there either with that tree line and with the wetland to keep, because we usually like to do straight lines and do things the best we can with straight lines. But with a configuration like that, there's a solid hardship, in my opinion, to be able to both put a house in on the property or utilize that building entitlement. I mean, we're not asking for strips or anything like that. He's including the wetlands and all that and stuff within the property. That's why he's ending up with 20-some acres. I mean, if we came in here and did a variance for a strip and did a couple acres in the back, he could still do it, but then you just have a pile of wetlands sitting out there. So looking at the property and what he's proposing, it makes sense. So.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Well, when I first read this, the 2.5 is kind of a stickler for me on that. And then if you go to that other drawing where that other property is down there, there's gonna be a small sliver piece in there in between the two, is that correct, or I'm journeying there?
Are you talking like right here?
Go up a little further in between the two on that, right there. So I go all the way back in there? Or is that
So and the applicant can speak on this behalf. So when Kyle submitted kind of these dimensions, there wasn't that division in Beacon yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know your exact intent, but now that Beacon is available, this is what I mapped out for that parcel. So it does kind of overhang it a little bit. I mean, the intent is probably to keep it right up against that parcel.
Yeah, we would keep it right up against that parcel. I was informed not to have an actual survey done. This will be good for this meeting. So now that this is on here, we'd follow that down and over to where that north-south line intersects. So it might end up being closer to that 22 acres.
what would be the drawback of holding it to 2.5 till prime? You could still have plenty of room to build in there.
You would probably have, there would be setbacks from the other property.
For the well and stuff.
The well, the septic, the driveway, you might end up with in the wetlands.
I'd like to know more for sure that you would or wouldn't. If you wouldn't, then I would like to stick with the 2.5 myself. I don't want to put another one off, but I would like to make it 2.5. Just as all the other ones that we've done.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Bruce, anything to add? Some of them? No? Okay. I appreciated the township acknowledging, the prime tillable land. That's important. But based on that and based on their confidence and clarity for this proposal and the city going along with it, I don't have any issues with the variance request. So with that said, can we get a motion?
Mr. Chair, after hearing Mr. Vick's comments, too, there's lots of houses and proposals that come through here on lakes where they build on a 1/4 acre of tillable or of property, above high water mark. And maybe Mr. Vick's comments are very, very right on spot, is that you don't need 4 acres of tillable ground to build a house. You can build a really nice house on 1 acre or 1.5 acres. So I'm kind of thinking that Mr. Vick is on the spot on this one.
If I can comment on that too, and I agree to a certain extent, but, while we're not beholden to what townships say, we do value that. And in this case, I thought they did a good job of being very clear and to the reasons why they thought it would work. And the fact that both the city as well are in agreement to it. That's why I feel very strongly as well is about I think this variance request is a reasonable one too, so it's my 2 cents there, so.
You
With
know,
that said, any further discussion? Do you want to?
yeah, you know, there's like no purpose that could come off that corner of the other property. To line them up a little bit better would shrink it down to probably 3.5 tillable. But right off that top corner and up, than what they are proposing, you know, it's just. it cuts
Well, if they want to,
corner.
future person or me want to have a shed or you want to have a horse, where do you put that at that point?
I just forgot something and I apologize. I just wanted to stop and pause real quickly. The young woman there you had a question. Is there anything else that you need clarity on or it's like, okay, I just want to make sure you had a chance. I said you would and I forgot about you. Sorry about that. So, right.
I believe it's the north side of that property that runs over. Now, you're proposing to go further past it, correct? Can you show that one where this bottom line, that's 47.5, 271. How far does that blue line go over? Right there, to that point up.
Well, that could be,
Going past
that
it.
could be reasonable.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I have
He
another
didn't,
job.
like he said, none of this was recorded when I got my paperwork in, so we didn't even know where that was.
Sure. If we get that, what's acreage then of tillable?
He's clicking.
Give me one
Oh,
second
okay.
here.
It's just nice not to have a bunch of jogs all over on other properties, you know?
Well, I mean,
You'll
yeah,
still
but
get to the
somewhat, this
4.
was allowed a month and a half ago to have on square lines. Must have been approved by the board too.
Right here, you might be looking at an 18-acre division, which would still require a variance for being over 10 acres, but now you're at about 2.5 acres of prime, which could potentially reduce that down.
Yeah, something like that would work. It's close to the 2.5 tillable. Would that work for you?
Mr. Chair, could I clarify something?
Sure.
So from the township standpoint, in my standpoint, having been in the area, around the area for a long time, understand that this large piece of property was largely mined for US Highway 12 construction some years ago. And it wasn't a very good piece of land then, and it still isn't. So from my standpoint, from what I've seen all the years, if there was 100 bushels of corn that came off from that 4.5 acres in the last 20 years, I'd be surprised. If you've ever driven past this property, even in a good year, it is not a high producer. We had the discussion at the township, and we had another local landowner, runs a lot of property, farmer, and he made the same comment. My position was, on that night, was thinking of that piece, that this is nowhere near prime farmland. It's the opposite of a swamp to me. It's an unusable, in a sense, not productive piece of land. You had all kinds of lake issues you've dealt with, which I've seen a number of those over the 21 years I've been doing this. And I see different things on Coquito Lake alone. And I just think, here's a beautiful opportunity. Instead of making everyone squeeze everything into something, there's room to make something that can actually be usable and nice for a long period of time for somebody and be a really good property. That's why I consider it highest and best use. That maybe clarifies.
Thank you.
If I may, Chairman.
Yep.
But the county does state it as prime tillable, and we kind of got to go with that. And we've held a lot of people down to 2.5. So I'm saying this would set a precedence if I was, okay, willy-nilly, we'll go 4.9 on this one. You know what I-
When was the last time they reclassified it?
I don't know.
Before or
Just
after,
based on prime.
before or after it was mined in 97?
I'm just going by what I'm presented with, a prime tillable. I know that the townships wants it, but you can go ahead.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Dan, please step up.
Dan Bravender, Coquito Township Chair. I think back to the 4 acres that we discussed, one of the main reasons is that we have a 22 acre or 21 and a half acre parcel here. And when somebody buys this property, they have the ability to develop that as ag property. They can put ag buildings on it if they want to. And so, having said that, that corner is, probably needed room for that kind of a development if that's what they choose to do. And I don't think that it's good from our standpoint to limit that by narrowing that down to a point where there's only 2.5 acres of buildable. This is not a residential lot, it's ag lot. And I guess that's the point I'd want to make, and why we looked at that square in the way we did. Okay, thank you.
If I may, Dan, once you put that as ag, but there's no land for ag there.
Pardon me?
If you build that, and then you said you wanted ag buildings on there, what are you gonna till? What are you
There's
gonna do?
many different types of ag. It's not just tilled.
Okay.
I just want to make that point. There's many different types of ag. What if somebody wanted to start an orchard there or whatever? There's many different types of ag.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
right on that one.
Okay, thank you.
So, I hear a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the oversized lot with in excess of the 2.5 acres of prime ag land, noting that the township approves of this split and that a large portion of the property is wetland.
Are we, I missed the first part. Are we approving the variance as presented?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, so just quickly, well, you guys have that motion seconded. So it was for a 21.6 acre entitlement division, including 4.8 acres of prime farmland. A couple things that I should be maybe pointed out or at least added on your guys' behalf. If you guys would like to have it subject to survey with legal description of the division and remainder of the parcel, subject to deed restriction, and then we'll have that site sketch noted Exhibit A.
Correct.
So noted. Okay.
Yes.
Now for discussion, how many animal parts, is there anything with animals on there?
There won't be any animal units on this property, given the wetland and the lake.
Okay.
So maybe we could even just put in there as a motion that no animal units are permitted.
Yes.
So noted. Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I missed the count.
3-2.
3-2.
Oh, so just you and I?
He
In.
voted yes.
Oh, yes, yes. And you, no, no? Yep. So motion fails then.
Motion carries.
Oh, motion carries, sorry. Sorry. All right. I got confused
Thank
there
you.
for a moment.
It's close.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you guys.
All right, last item on the agenda, we have the Joseph Holthouse request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward, state your first and last name?
Joseph Holthouse.
All right. So this is an 80.1 acre property in Monticello Township, and it's zoned general agriculture. The request is to create a 38.8 acre entitlement division, and the remainder of the parcel would have 200 feet of road frontage. A variance is required as the proposed 38.8 acre entitlement division exceeds the 10.0 acre maximum and the 2.5 acre prime soils maximum. The remainder of the parcel, which is 41.3 acres, would have the 200 feet of road frontage, whereas 300 feet is required. Township approves of the request, and that essentially wraps up my overview. We did look at it briefly. I mean, without splitting it, pretty much right on the quarter lines, we have to look at it like if you're going to split it into two parcels now, it's got to be a division of some sort using the entitlement division. So, process.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you would like to add?
Just maybe a little addition, the landowners used it for previous pasture land. His land adjoins it in the upper corner, and he would like to purchase that for pasture land for his cattle.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up to the public now. Is there any comments from the public? Yes, sir, if you could just step aside and you come up and state your name.
Yes, Randy Olson. I own the property directly on the road to the east, up in there, yes. On the variance, I'm just curious, because you need 300 feet, and I tried looking at the rules, but maybe you can clarify me. If you want to have a split off of 40, you have to have 300 feet of road variance. Is that for an entitlement? That's one question. And then number two is, if the adjoining property owner is buying that, why would that even be necessary then to have variance? So I can sit down and you can.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can kind of cover both those. So part one, we'll talk about the road frontage. Anytime a parcel is over 5.0 acres and you're creating a new either division or split off it, you got to have proper road frontage. Proper road frontage is 300 feet over 5 acres. Easement access does not count, so you can't give another 100 feet of easement or whatever. It's got to be 300. So that's kind of off the table. Second part, so let's say, well, he wanted to combine it with this down here. Well, if you're going to do an ag or a split for ag divisions or anything like that to then combine it, one of the criteria you have to have is a full quarter section. In this case, they're both very close to 40 acres. I don't disagree with that at all. It's just the part that by ordinance, there's no way to get a full quarter out of it because they're splitting it at this kind of odd shape. We already tried seeing if you split, north-south at about the center, right on the quarter lines, those could be sold, no variances needed, right? You could have put an entitlement on one or the other, and then the other piece could have been sold. But you're right, they've got the tilled portion versus the pasture portion. It's not following that quarter line. So essentially, that's why they're here.
Okay. And it's my understanding that there's only one entitlement, and that's going on the 38.
Correct. Their proposal is to have it on the tilled portion.
Okay, thank you very much.
If the applicant could step up. There you go. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. So with no further comments from the public, we'll close it and we'll open it up. And I think, Dan, can you get us started?
Yeah. I've got several concerns with this. Aaron, could you help me out? I looked at this on Beacon, but I didn't pull up. What is the land use plan on it?
Still ag.
Still
I
ag.
looked to see if it was in the transition area. Had it been in the transition area, you would have had to go through the MOAA. And I think we're far enough outside. I'll pull it up again just for clarification up here. But
I guess where I'm coming from on that is we have a body of water that's just about the length of an 80. And with all the development we have coming into Wright County and the different things, we're splitting things off all the time on duck ponds and sloughs and all that. And I look at where these lines are drawn, I understand what they're wanting to do is preserve pasture, preserve tillable land. But where that line is drawn, they're not, when it's split off into 10-acre lots going across, or however you change that, we're going to do a very large injustice to that planning later. So I really have a challenge with where I understand what you're trying to do,
Right.
but in the planning portion of it and not following the 40, I mean, even if you follow it and split it off into 40 and come down that way, if he's using it for pasture, he gets the majority of the pasture. And then portion of the water still stays the same, and you're just kind of splitting that up. In the west 40, you got water frontage all the way around it if it gets split off into 10-acre lots. I'm trying to look at, when we're doing these splits, making it make sense for the future. The previous one we just did is completely different than this one, and going in straight lines and different things. So I really don't see a hardship in not following the quarter lines or splitting it as a 40, because if somebody wants the pasture, a large portion of the pasture is on one of the 40s. Acreage is still the same. You're still buying the same amount. Whoever's running the land just has to pay 2 landlords.
So
We as farmers love paying landlords.
Thank you, Dan.
I was going to point out, yep. So it is still in the land use plan for general ag. I just kind of mapped it out briefly. So it's a subjective, but at least the numbers there, whether you think it's close or far, You know, you're still over about 2 miles till you start getting into Monticello, and still about 2 miles till you're into the city of Buffalo, or 2.5 miles or so. I can pull up the land use plan. I don't think there's gonna be much around this area, right? I mean, you're sitting in an area where it's probably gonna be general agriculture for at least the foreseeable future, but everything is subject to change.
Thank you, Aaron. Dan?
Yeah, as proposed, and hearing Aaron and Dan, you need 300 feet anyways for that other spot, right? So by that time, I'm thinking quarter by quarter would be within reason, you know, through the quarter line, split it down the middle.
Okay.
I think that would be a better plan, so. Well, I'd like to hear what everyone else says. If I can hear, my hearing aids went dead. So, thank you.
You know, there's just some properties that should be left whole. Just because you can split them doesn't mean you should. And this doesn't follow the quarter plan. It doesn't, it really seems like the only hardship is that you have a buyer that maybe doesn't want to buy the whole thing, and that's something that this board, the financial aspect of it doesn't pertain to this board. That's just on your side of the table. And so, yeah, as this is proposed, I would not support it.
Thank you, Bob. And likewise, yeah, I think we might be creating this board, creating a problem down the line, potentially. So with that said, you know, so we have before us, you know, it sounds like your proposal won't pass. So I guess we can either withdraw, you have an opportunity to withdraw a request, you can vote on it, or we can you can come back and redesign it, or I think you could even determine whether you want to go quarter to quarter now. We could, of course, then you won't need a variance, so.
Correct.
Yeah, so I guess it's up to you how you'd like to proceed.
So if we go quarter to quarter, I wouldn't even have to come before the board
No.
if we change to that.
Yeah, so that's, and Aaron could help you out on that, so.
So then we'll just withdraw at this point.
Yeah, rather than vote on it, so.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your time.
Thank
Well,
you.
hold on. I'll make a motion to withdraw without prejudice.
There a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? None? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Joel, we got a form for you. Cheryl has a form for you. We need your signature on a withdrawal form. Thank you.
Is that those?
My hearing aids.
Yeah.
They went dead on me.
I have one additional question to ask the council, not related, but when appropriate. Oh, you know, discussions come up, and I don't know how the bylaws are written procedurally as far as when new members leave and come on board, but you know, like with John leaving, is there a way that we can, you know ahead of time so we have an opportunity to acknowledge their service and things like that? It always comes up rather quickly, and I don't sure if that is part of a bylaw issue with the county, or if it's just something we can do internally.
It's an ordinance issue. The terms start and end at the beginning, at the end and beginning of a year. And unfortunately, our last meeting that John was here was early December. I wasn't even able to be here because I was at a conference. And then the decision was made by the county board after that meeting. And it was, it's effective January 1.
I know it's kind of petty, but it's just one of those things that, you know, is there any way, or is it just something that we just can't do? I mean,
It's just a matter of the timing of the minutes or the meetings, and not really anything we can do. I mean, we're beholden to the county board.
Okay.
So when they put it on the agenda, when they approve it. Dan, just so you know, your hearing aids are chirping like a bunch of mice in the background.
Yeah, I took them out. That's why they're making noises.
Just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. It's just,
back in my ear so I don't trip.
it's just how the meetings and the procedure for how they decided to select kind of came up.
We're glad to have you.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah.
you know, when you get to be friends and you get to know people.
Mr. Chair, can I bring one other thing up? We were given a per diem
Hey, gentlemen, we're still in a meeting here. If you want to talk, you need to go in the hallway. Thank you.
We were giving a per diem sheet, and I briefly was reading through it, and I guess I would like clarification, just so we all know. Aaron or whoever, it said on planning and zoning, site inspections was moved to $70, but it says planning and zoning, and it didn't say Board of Adjustments.
I think
it's
it
from-
notifies planning commission, there's board of adjustment, and then planning and zoning separate. So I think planning and zoning is actually referring to both of them. If you read that, there's a
Okay,
planning
well,
commission.
that's what I'm just trying to
Yeah, so I
clarify.
think that's how it works, and I don't know, I was gonna mention that at the end, it was a county board resolution, or I don't remember what it says on there, but
So they lowered our site inspection fees to $70, just so everybody's aware of it.
270, we used to get 50.
No, we got 120.
I thought we got 50 when we were over there on time.
Oh, yeah, over there.
Yeah.
Then they raised us to 120, and now they've lowered it back down to 70 for,
We do this because we like to see each other, that's all. I mean, Anyway,
Okay.
thank you. I think what we'll do is, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right,
Second.
second, all right. Thank you.